Paris, Ukraine, Israel, America, and much more to cover, guys. This is episode 2 of the World's News Round. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here with episode 2 of the World's News Round. A news round coverage looking at stories outside the UK. And we're starting with France 24 with the headline here that Paris prosecutors are seeking EU funding trial for Le Pen's far-right party. So what is this all about? So apparently, Paris prosecutors said on Friday that they were seeking to put the far-right leader Marine Le Pen and 26 associates on trial over claims they use EU funds to finance party activities in France. That's a big, bold statement to make, yeah. That is for sure. The fake job inquiries began in 2015 and hung over Le Pen as she sought the French presidency in 2017 and 2022, losing out both times to centrist Emmanuel Macron. She and the others have been charged with embezzlement of public funds and collusion, accused of using parliamentary funds to pay for assistants who in fact worked for her National Rally Party, formerly called the National Front. Le Pen, who stepped down as an MEP in 2017 after her election to the French Parliament, has denied the claims. Interesting, really, isn't it? So they're basically saying they used EU funding money, which they weren't supposed to. The charges carry sentences of up to 10 years in prison and a fine of up to double the alleged funds embezzlement. If convicted, the court would declare Le Pen eligible for office for up to 10 years, threatening her plans to make a fourth run for the French presidency in 2027. Yeah, she's been getting a bit closer and closer to actually getting that power. You know, it was quite close in the last election between Le Pen and Macron. So that she still has she still has those supporters. And, you know, people are not all in on Macron, that is for sure. Prosecutors allege that starting in 2004, National Front Euro deputies, including Le Pen and her father, party co-founder Jean-Marie Le Pen, took part in a fake job scheme. The EU Parliament estimates in 2018 that €6.8 million has been embezzled from 2009 to 2017. In total, prosecutors want trial for 11 Euro deputies, 12 of their parliamentary assistants and 4 party collaborators, while the RM party itself faces charges of concealing the wrongdoing. We contest this view to us mistaken of the work opposition deputies and their assistants, work that is above all political, an RN official said on Friday. On Thursday, Le Pen's lawyers said she agreed to pay back the EU Parliament funds sought in the fraud case following an administrative procedure to recover the money. The European Anti-Fraud Office, the OLAF, that's Olaf from Frozen obviously, had determined she owed €339,000 for illegally paying her party's chief of staff Kathleen Grissett and the bodyguards Thierry Ligar with parliamentary funds. Le Pen had refused to reimburse the money, prompting the EU to start docking her pay in the final months as an MEP. She paid back almost €330,000 in July, but the decision does not in any way constitute explicit or implement recognition of European Parliament claims, lawyer Raoul Bulek said. Apologies for mispronouncing his names. In a separate case, Olaf also alleged around €600,000 of expensive claims by Le Pen and 3 other Euro deputies actually financed party operations in France. This is not good for Le Pen. This prosecution, this weighing over her and her party's head, you know, it's almost similar in lines of what was with Trump, with what's going on with Trump and things that his crimes are for. Obviously, there are things that former Prime Minister Boris Johnson is alleged for. This is really not good, a good picture for her. But what I'm pretty sure, viewing from the outside, that she's probably painting this as, oh, that the lefties are all trying to get me, the establishment is trying to get me. That's the kind of rhetoric that she and her party will probably play along those lines, most likely, I would say, on there. I don't think it's going to take her down, if I'm honest. I could be wrong. It is within the EU, in the European Union, and as one of the strongest, most democratic powers in the world. Will it bring Le Pen down? I don't think it will. I still think she's gonna. I just think she's still gonna end up running in 2027, because she's not going away. At least not for now. Anyway, I don't think. It doesn't appear to be the case, in my opinion. But she's certainly making headway. That's for sure. So we're going to go away from France now. We're going to head to, we've got two stories from the coverage of the war in Ukraine. This story, this was an event that took place on Friday, guys. This is the day of the recording of it. So this one from the Kyiv Post, guys. The Kyiv confirms an attack on the Black Sea Fleet headquarters and said they hoped for a bigger hole. Air Force spokesperson Yuri Ignak said the strikes was carried out with Storm Shadow and Scalp missiles and was a blow to the dictatorship of Putin. So Ukraine had confirmed it was behind a missile attack on the headquarters of Russia's Black Sea Fleet in Crimea on Friday afternoon. Air Force spokesperson Yuri Nagak, speaking on Ukrainian television, said that while he was pleased by the result of the strike, he had hoped the efforts would be more dramatic. I wanted a bigger hole, to be honest, he said. Referencing the UK and France supplied Storm Shadow and Scalp cruise missiles used in the attack, he added, "This is the best advertisement in the world of our weapons, which fly exactly on target." Well, not exactly your weapons if you're taking them from other nations, to be fair. For some reason, the Russian air defense cannot cope. For the umpteenth time, to be continued. The Russian Military of Defense announced the attack on the HQ in Sevastopol, saying in a post on Telegram, "In the course of repelling the missile attack, anti-aircraft missiles shot down 5 missiles." As a result of the attack, the historic headquarters of the Black Sea Fleet was damaged. According to the information available, 1 soldier was killed. They later revised their assessment to say that the dead soldier was only missing. Okay. Yeah, we're not going to click that, guys, for just in case something happens to the video. Ignak said the attack was carried out with the help of Russian residents of Crimea, who provided Ukraine with information. Yeah, there's going to be insiders in Crimea working for Ukraine. That's not a surprise. He added, "This is not only a blow to the heart of the naval forces of the Black Sea Fleet, this is a blow to the dictatorship of Putin. Everyone will see it. This cannot be hidden." They will once again understand that Crimea is Ukrainian and Crimea will soon be liberated. Russian officials also provided that the peninsula has been hit by an unprecedented cyber attack targeting its internet providers. It comes 2 days after a missile attack on Russia's backup Black Sea Fleet command post. So yeah, this quite another devastating attack on Russia's fleet. We'll have to keep an eye on that, obviously. Another thing, I have looked at Bakhmut, and there hasn't been too much movement there from reports that I've seen. So there's nothing really to update on there on that front. It does appear in some cases, we'll look at the next article in a bit, but it does appear in some cases of things going on in the conflict and the war, that the counterattack is kind of slowing down a little bit now with Ukraine, but it's to be expected, I would say. But that's what I've seen from some articles and some things on Telegram and that of what I've seen so far. But obviously things can change at a whim, to be fair, guys. So one of the most reliable sources I use for what's going on in Ukraine, we're going to go to the Kyiv Independent here. This is one of the many stories that they usually do. So a large-scale cyber attack has been reported in occupied Crimea. And this is one I thought quite interesting. It's a short one, but we'll look into it. So Russia's proxies in occupied Crimea announced on September 22nd that there was a cyber attack of unprecedented scale. Olive Krushkov, a Russian proxy official in the occupied peninsula, stated on Telegram that there were disruptions to internet services across Crimea. At this time, it is unknown whether the cyber attack is continuing and that Kyiv has not commented on it yet. The attack occurred after the Russian Defense Ministry announced that a Ukrainian missile had struck the Russian Black Sea Fleet headquarters in Senopol earlier in the day. Cyber warfare has been a critical part of Russia's war in Ukraine even before the full-scale invasion, as well as other Russian acts of aggression towards Estonia and other neighbouring countries. Ukraine has invested heavily in its cyber defence capabilities, also increased its own offensive cyber tactics after the beginning of the full-scale invasion. So there are cyber attacks taking place, still occurring there as well. I'm just going to refresh and just see if we've had any other stories that are probably just seen here. I'm just seeing here on the news feed on the left hand side. They normally drop quite a lot of news here. Well, just have a quick look at some of them here from the Kyiv Independent. So Danish Leopard 1 tanks donated to Ukraine have defects. So Denmark's defence ministry has discovered that 12 out of the 20 Leopard A1A tanks that has been sent to Ukraine are faulty. The Danish government own TV channel reported 10 Leopard 1 battle tanks have arrived in Ukraine with minor defects, which the Ukrainian military is already repairing. Could they not fix them themselves, the Danish? TV2 wrote, citing a statement by Defensive Minister Charles. Another 10 tanks sent by Denmark are still in Poland, 2 of which have serious defects. Polskan wrote to the party behind the Danish-Ukrainian Front coordinating the country's military assistance for Ukraine. On the September 19th, German news outlet Spiegel reported that Ukraine had refused to accept a recent batch of 10 1A5 tanks sent by Germany, saying they needed repairs that the Ukrainian military could not carry out. Some of the first 10 Leopards provided by Germany in July also reportedly suffered similar issues. Earlier this year, Germany announced, in cooperation with Denmark and the Netherlands, it will provide Ukraine with around 100 older Leopard 1 tanks. That's all well and good, yeah, but if they're not working, what's much good of them? What's this other story? We'll have a look at one more, guys, and then we'll move on from Ukraine. US to send small number of ATACMSs to Ukraine. So, a US Army tactical missile system. So, more weapons from the looks of it. US President Joe Biden has told the Ukrainian counterpart Vladimir Zelensky that Washington would provide Ukraine with a small number of long-range ATACMS missiles, NBC News reported on September 22nd, citing 3 US officials and a congressional official familiar with the matter. According to NBC News, the official did not reveal the date of the delivery or when a public announcement would be made. Zelensky met Biden in the White House, part of his official visit to Washington on September 21st during the stay of the Ukraine's president in the US capital. State Secretary Antony Blinken announced a new military aid package for Ukraine worth $325 million. The latest tranche including additional cluster munitions and air defences, among other equipment, but excluding much desired ATACMS missiles. Until now, the White House was long reluctant to provide the missiles with the range of roughly 300 kilometers to bolster Ukraine's army, despite requests from Kyiv and US lawmakers. Ukraine has already managed to secure Storm Shadow and Scalp long-range missiles from the UK, and France hopes to acquire ATACMSs and Germany's Taurus missiles as well. So it looks like they're going to be getting some more equipment, obviously, as well there. So interesting update to say the least, yeah, on what's happening in there. But yeah, they have quite a decent news feed there from the Kyiv Independent. And that's normally where I get some of my short videos that you guys see that I drop on the channel. And they're very, they update that a lot, very regularly as well, which is really good stuff there. So let's move on to the next one, guys. So we're going to move on from Ukraine, and we're going to have a look at the Middle East. This is from Al Jazeera, guys. More incidences are taking place in Israel, Gaza, the occupied West Bank. So the headline here is Israel forces kill Palestinian northern West Bank raid. Abdullah Abu Hassan, 18, was shot in the al-Dominum and killed by Israeli forces during a raid at Kafr Jan near Jem. A Palestinian teenager was shot dead by Israeli forces during a raid near the city of Jen in the northern occupied West Bank. In a statement, the Palestinian Health Ministry said the 18-year-old was killed by live rounds to the al-Dominum in the town of Kafr Dam. He is the 7th Palestinian to be killed by Israeli forces this week. 7th to have been killed. Israel troops raided several homes in the early town on Friday, triggering confrontations with Palestinian residents by firing sound bombs, tear gas, canisters and live ammunition. Excuse me. The Palestinian Islamic Jihadi group identified as the victims as Abdullah Abu Hassan and said he was a local fighter from the Al-Quds Brigade armed wing. The Israel military said soldiers opened fire at suspects who shot and hurled an explosive device at them during a weapons search operation in Kafr Dam. A hit was identified, it said in the statement. Violence in the occupied West Bank has surged for more than a year with increased Israel military raids, increased settler assaults on Palestinian village and a spaff of Palestinian attacks targeting Israelis. On Tuesday, 3 Palestinians were killed during a military raid on Jen, among them a 15-year-old who was shot by Israeli special forces after he discovered them as he was leaving his grandfather's house, according to the rights group Defense of Children International Palestine. The United Nations has said 2023 is the deadliest year for Palestinians since it started counting faculties in 2006. More than 200 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli fire since the start of this year. According to the Health Ministry, at least 35 Israelis have also been killed in Palestine attacks during the same period. United States sponsored statehood negotiations collapsed in 2014 and current diplomatic efforts seem to be focusing on forging a historic deal between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Addressing the United Nations General Assembly on Thursday, President Mohammed Abbas said Middle Eastern peace was attainable only when Palestinians achieved their full rights. He called on the UN to convene a peace conference to salvage the two-state solution. Yeah, it doesn't appear, guys, that there's going to be any chime of that soon. As it says in the article there, obviously there's been a lot of talk. I haven't really covered it too much, but obviously there's been a lot of talk about Israel and Saudi Arabia looking like they've been working out some kind of a deal. So that's really been the main talk taking place in the Middle East right now. Really, that's kind of the main story there, and it would be quite a significant one if a deal was to be struck between the two nations. But in terms of what's happening here in the West Bank, obviously there needs to be something that needs to be stopped. I mean, over 200 Palestinians have lost their lives here, and over 75, was it 70 or so? Yeah, and over 70, 35, at least 35 Israelis have lost their lives as well. So lives have been lost on both sides here. Yes, of course, Palestinians have lost more lives, but more needs to be done to stop this, stop these raids. I believe there needs to be some kind of solution because people are dying as a result of what is happening over there, and we'd like a solution sooner rather than later if possible. Right, so the next one, guys, we're running through these quite quickly, to be fair, so it's probably not going to be an hour long, this news round. So this one, I'll make sure I've got the right, just hold on, guys, I'm just going to make sure I've definitely got the right one. Yeah, okay. So this one is from the BBC News, guys. This one, we're going from Asia. Pretty interesting. It's an interesting one, to say the least, shall we say. To be careful what I say about this one. China's MeToo activist stands trial for subversion. Sophia Hyung Wang, a prominent MeToo activist in China, mysteriously vanished in 2021. A leading activist in China's MeToo movement has gone on trial for subversion, according to campaigners. Journalist Sophia Hyung Yang appeared in court in the southern city of Gajabu on Friday with her co-accuser, Labour campaigner Wang Jiabing. The two were detained in 2021 as part of China's wide crackdown on activists. Rights groups have raised concerns over their condition while in detention. Mrs. Young, 35, has been sleep deprived and malnourished, a friend told news website Radio Free Asia. Friday's hearing proceeded under heavy guard with authorities surrounding the courthouse with a fence, said the spokesperson of a group that is campaigning for their freedom. There's a very heavy police presence around the court today because of the trial, said the spokesperson, who asked not to be named but is also a friend of Mrs. Young and Mrs. Wang. A family member of Mrs. Hung was seen entering the court building, the spokesperson told the BBC. Mrs. Young, a freelance journalist, was a prominent figure in the MeToo movement in China, sparking the first MeToo case in 2018 after she helped a graduate student go public with accusations against her PhD supervisor. Ms. Hung also wrote about her experience on workplace sexual harassment while working in a Chinese news agency. Many advocates for gender rights and social causes in China choose to remain anonymous and are accused of being agents of hostile Western forces by state media and nationalists online. Mr. Wang, a strong supporter of gender rights, is better known for defending labour rights and helping workers with disabilities find legal support. The two were arrested in Guangzhou on 19th of September 2021. While travelling to the airport, Mrs. Hung was on her way to the UK to begin a master's degree on gender violence and conflict at the University of Sussex when she was detained. Mr. Wang, who was seeing her off, was arrested along with her. A BBC Eye investigation in 2022 found that both were being held in solitary confinement, detained in secret locations known as black jails. Sentiments on Chinese social media towards them have been split, with supporters calling for their release. It's been 2 years, it's time, said one user. But there are those who are critical of feminist movement, with one user saying, I hope they get a heavy sentence. Calling them part of the courageous wave of younger Chinese activists, Amnesty International Deputy Regional Mayor for Asia Sarah Brooks said that Mrs. Young and Mr. Wang have been targeted by a government that fears organised dissent. These baseless charges are motivated purely by Chinese authorities' relentless determination to crush critical voices, but activists in China refuse to be silent despite serious risk of raising their voices to address so-called sensitive issues, Mrs. Brooks added. Well, they are being quiet about it, and I wouldn't blame them really, to be fair, guys. This is China we're talking about, and China will not allow, especially people who live and work in their country, too much free speech. I think one time, I remember an influential, I can't remember who it was, but she was a very popular Chinese celebrity or social media activist or something. Not an activist, but just a celebrity of some sorts in China. And she was asked about government surveillance, and she basically said, who cares, as long as you don't criticise or say anything about the government, you'll be fine. Like, who cares if they're watching you, as long as you don't say anything. It doesn't state that she's outright criticised the government, but the problem is that anyone who says anything, they are silenced in a way. We know that I'm worried about Hong Kong, obviously, because at some point China are trying to are applying their pressure, aren't they, on Hong Kong? I do worry about them as well, and I just hope that she and Mr. Hyung are okay, and it's not as awful as it sounds. It is a bit scary when you think about the stories of what you hear about China and the way they treat people, but at the same time it's like, well, you can only go by what news and media tell you at the end of the day. Detailed in secret locations, loans, black jails is pretty frightening, to say the least, when you think about it, guys. So guys, we've only got a couple more articles to go through. As I said, we're probably not going to end up covering Probably not going to end up the hour mark, but we'll see. But if you can, hit the like button while you're here, and of course if you can share across social media, it'd be greatly appreciated too. So the next one we're going to is in India. This is an interesting story I saw here from CNN, to say the least. So this one is, the headline is, India agrees to reserve a third of parliament seats for women, but the change could still take years. So before I read any more of this, so I think my understanding is, because I did read a bit of it before we read it together, and my understanding of this, obviously this is a fight to give women more rights in India, and to give them a bit more of a say within their parliament. So I believe it's fully dominated by men. My understanding is, which is a good thing, because it took a while. Remember where, in the UK, and how long it took for women to get a voice in the parliament there. And now, if you look at the Labour Party and look at their side, and it's full of the cabinet, especially, is full of a lot of women, and the Conservatives do have their women as well. So yeah, you know, we've come a long way, but there's always room for improvement, I would say, on women's rights. There's, especially in politics. I know, of course, there's still lots more needs to be done, rightly so, but I would say as long as you are going in that direction and stepping in the right direction, that is a good thing. But let's see how things are actually in India. So, India's parliament has passed a landmark bill Thursday that will reserve a third of its seats in the lower house and state assemblies for women, in a major win for rights groups that have for decades campaigned for better gender representation in politics. The bill received cross-party support and was celebrated by politicians across India's often fragile political spectrum, but some expressed reservations that it could still take years for the quota to be implemented. A total of 214 lawmakers from Upper House voted in favour of the Women's Reservation Bill, which was introduced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government in a special parliamentary session on Tuesday. It was approved by the lower house on Wednesday. This is, I'm glad this was cross-party consent as well. It's sometimes you can't always get parties, cross-parties agreements. But when they do, they come together. Normally, it's in the interest of the people when bills are normally passed. You'd like to think most cross-party bills are in the interest of the people. And I would say this is definitely one of them. A historic moment in our country's democratic journey, Modi wrote on Twitter after its approval. With the passing of this bill, the representation of women power will be strengthened, and a new era of their empowerment will begin. 6 attempts to pass the bill, first introduced in 1996, have failed, at times due to strong disapproval from the country's overwhelming male lawmakers. So 1996 was the first time they introduced the bill, and it's now 2023. And they're saying it's still going to take years before it gets implemented as well. In India, the world's largest democracy of 1.4 billion people, women make up nearly half of the country's 950 million registered voters, but only 50% of lawmakers in parliament and 10% in state assemblies. Yeah, that's bad. It needs to be much, much higher. Despite being voted through, the move will not apply to next year's general election. The implementation of the quota could take years, as it depends on the redrawing of electoral constituencies, which will only happen after the completion of India's once-in-a-decade census. The huge census project was meant to take place in 2021, but was delayed due to the coronavirus pandemic, which has been stalled ever since. Some members of India's opposition expressed disappointment that the bill won't come into effect sooner. Sonia Gandhi, leader of the Indian National Congress, said women have been waiting 13 years for this bill to go through. Now they have been asked to wait longer, she told lawmakers in Parliament. How many years more? Rangi Pratini, apologies for mispronunciation, another Congress lawmaker, said that while the party was very happy at its passage, their demand is that the bill should be implemented immediately for the general elections. She added it should include OBC reservations as well, referring to India's caste system, a 2,000-year-old social heritage imposed on the people by birth. Though abolished in 1950, it still exists in many aspects of life. Nonetheless, the bill's passage in Parliament will be seen as a further boost to Modi and his Bharatiya Janata Party, the BJP, ahead of the national elections next year. While India has made progress on women's issues in recent years, it remains a deeply particular country. It has, since its independence in 1947, has had one female Prime Minister. Indira Gandhi served as the country's leader twice before her assassination in 1984. India's current President, Maru, who was appointed to the position last year, only became the second woman to take the seat. Across the world, the overall share of lower house parliamentary seats occupied by women is about 26% according to the UN's women's data, up from 11% in 1995. Again, it's steps in the right directions, but more needs to be done. Only 6 nations currently have achieved 50% or more of women in power, women in parliament in single or lower houses. Rwanda leads with 61%, followed by Cuba with 53%, Nicaragua 52%, Mexico 50%, New Zealand 50%, and the United Arab Emirates 50%. A further 23 countries have reached or surpassed 40%, including 13 countries in Europe, 6 in Africa, 3 in Latin America and the Caribbean, and 1 in Asia, Timor-Leste. However, Taiwan was not counted in the UN data, has the second highest representation of women's legislation in Asia after UAE at 43%. So there has been progress made. It's the only downside, obviously, is it could take years to implement, which is the only real downside to it. But it's a good step in the right direction, a step better for women's rights in India. And I'm glad that they're getting they're going to be getting more of a voice, and hopefully it will lead to better prosperity for women in India. I think that's the best way to put it, guys. At least we hope so. That is for sure. So this story, you guys may have heard of this story for going on for a while now. So this is we're going to America. I think both of our stories here, yeah, both these last stories we got are both from America, guys. So you guys have been aware, may or may not have heard about the strikes taking place in Hollywood. Well, we've got an update from NBC News on this, guys. So the Hollywood strike deal inching closer after more than 10 hours of talks with studio heads, source says. Negotiations will enter the third day Friday, with the hopes rising for an agreement to end the strikes that has largely frozen the entertainment industry. Hollywood is inching closer to a deal to end the strikes that has largely frozen the entertainment industry after studio heads joined marathon talks Thursday, the second day of negotiations that lasted more than 10 hours. A source familiar with the discussion has told NBC News. So, among them, Disney's Bob Iger, Netflix Ted Sarandos, Discovery's David Zago, and Comcast NBC Universal Group's chairman Donna Lange, NBC is owned by Comcast, were all at the bargaining table for the second day of talks in Los Angeles, the source said. A deal was not reached, the source said, but added that the two sides were inching closer to an agreement, with negotiations ending their third day on Friday. Progress was on some of the biggest issues, the source said, including writers' demand for greater royalties for their work, known in the industry as REGANELITE, and stricter protections against the use of artificial intelligence. But there are still several sticking points that have yet to be resolved, the source said. The Writers' Guild of America and the Alliance of Motion Pictures and Television Producers said in a joint statement they have met for the bargaining Thursday and would meet again Friday. So it could be, guys, I just want to point this out because I am recording this on Friday. It could be by the time you guys hear this that a deal may have been struck potentially. If so, that's great. Your negotiation committee appreciates all the messages and solidarity and support we have received in the last few days and ask as many of you as possible to come out to the picket lines tomorrow, the statement said. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass said in a statement on Thursday that she felt very encouraged by the continued negotiations. The entertainment industry is a fundamental pillar of our economy, directly impacting not just those who work in the industry, but the thousands of small businesses that support the industry every day, he said. I will continue to be in touch with all parties involved. Let's get this deal done, Bass said. WGA members have been on strike since early May. Actors joined the picket line in July on a separate dispute, bringing production on many Hollywood television shows and films to a halt. The strike has had a major impact on the industry. High-profile releases have been pushed back, while productions has been stopped on widely anticipated films like Gladiator 2 and Mission Impossible, along with popular shows like Stranger Things and Yellowstone. Yeah, the entertainment industry has been hit hard by these strikes. And the thing is, they want better pay, they want better working conditions. Rights that generally they want to protect, and also the fear of artificial intelligence being taken over by them. They want to ensure their rights are protected. The work that they do, that they put in, are looked after. That's what this is. Their rights here are at risk here. And this has been a long time coming as well. These strikes, they have been a long time coming, and we have to support these workers. And I hope that they get a good deal, not just a deal, but a good deal for them that will benefit them, that will benefit the industry, that will protect those in workers' rights in the industry. Ensure not only they're getting decent pay, but they get the recognition that they deserve as well. And that given a fair way, because these companies make millions and billions and trillions of the projects that they do, but behind all these projects there are people behind the scenes, not just the directors, but there are some of the very basic people just doing very basic things, like some of the most basic of things. It's no different anyway in society, some of the simple basic jobs that people do. And that they feel that they're being taken advantage of, and it needs to stop, and that's what they're fighting for. So cross fingers, by the time this video comes out, a deal would have been struck. At least I hope so anyway, guys. Let's hope a deal gets struck on this one as well, because this last story, this has not been good for America. This one's from AP News, guys. The headline that hard-right Republicans push dangerously closer to a disruptive federal shutdown. With House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's latest funding plan in ruins and lawmakers leaving town for the weekend, there's no endgame in sight as hard-right Republicans push dangerously closer to a disruptive federal shutdown. Excuse me. The White House will tell federal agencies on Friday to prepare for a shutdown, according to an official with the Office of Management and Budget, who insisted on anonymously to discover the upcoming instructions. That standard 7-day work, 7 days out from a federal disruption. The Republican McCarthy has repeatedly tried to appease his hard right flank by agreeing to the steep spending cuts that are demanding to keep the government open. But cheered on by Donald Trump, the Republican frontrunner for president in 2024, the Conservative have all but seized control in a dramatic fashion. In a crushing defeat Thursday, a handful of Republican hardliners blocked a typical popular defense bill from advancing. The second time this week, it was a setback and unheard loss for a House Speaker. God, he's in such a lose-lose situation, isn't he? He had to make some serious, like he's got some really crazy people in that Republican Party. There are one or two good Republicans, but the vast majority, obviously, are absolutely cuckoo, to be fair. And Donald Trump breathing down their neck doesn't help either. Even a stopgap bill to keep the government funding past the September 30th deadline, called a continuous resolution, or CR, is a non-starter for some of the right flank who have essentially seized control of the House. This is a whole new concept of individuals who just want to burn the whole place down, McCarthy said after the Thursday vote. Acknowledging he was frustrated, it doesn't work. They don't care, some of them. Some of them just don't care at this point. They rather see everything fall apart. My voice is really hurting today. I do apologise, guys. The open revolt was further evidence that McCarthy's strategy of repeating and giving in to the Conservatives seemingly only emboiling them, allowing them to run roughshod over their own House majority. Their Conservative bills have almost no chance in the Senate. Trump urged the Conservatives to hold the line against the higher funding levels McCarthy had agreed to with President Joe Biden earlier this year to end the federal crime indictments against him. This is also the last chance to defund those political prosecutions against me and other patriots, Trump wrote on social media. They failed on the debt limit, but they must not fail now. Use the power of the purse and defend the country, the former president wrote. Excuse me. Wish he would shut up, that guy. The White House and Democrats, along with some Republicans, warned that a shutdown would be devastating for the people who rely on the government for everyday services and would undermine America's standing in the world. Yeah, it would. This is partial government shutdowns. Congress has led federal funding lapse more than a dozen times since 1976, forcing a partial shutdown of the federal government. While most have spanned only a few days, one 2018 shutdown lasted more than a month. Oh, wow. Yes, this is shutdowns lasting less than 2 days are not shown. In 2018, control of the House of Representatives changed from Republicans to Democrats during the shutdown. This source is from Congressional Research Service. So, if you can see, so these are the times where there's been shutdowns in the government. They've had that 34. They've had a full 34 days in 2018-2019 under President Trump. 1995-1996 they had Bill Clinton with 21 days. Jimmy Carter there in 1978 had 17. Barack Obama had 16 days. 2013 when he was president. Twice Jimmy Carter has had in 1977 and 1979, both 12 and 11 days respectively. Gerald Ford there in 1976. Jimmy Carter had 5. Jimmy Carter had 5 shutdowns, according to this. And Bill Clinton just 5 days, but still, they've all got to get on the same damn page here, don't they? We need the extreme MAGA Republicans to get their act together, says House Democratic leader Hakeem Jenkins of New York, referring to Trump's Make America Great Again slogan. End the Civil War, Jeffries urged Republicans. Get your act together. But one of Trump's top allies, Republican Matt Gaetz, that guy is awful. Matt Gaetz is awful, by the way. He's a nasty person. Ralph Lang, who is leading the hard right flank, said the House Republicans have almost no choice left but to spend the time it takes to pass each of the 12 spending bills needed to fund the government. Typically a laborious process, even if it meant going into a shutdown. Or they can join with Democrats and pass a CR which is sure to put McCarthy's job at risk. What Gaetz said he and several others would not do is vote for a continuing resolution that fails to slash spending. I'm giving an eulogy to CR right now, Gaz told reporters in late afternoon meeting at the Capitol. I represent Florida's first congressional district where during the shutdown tens of thousands of people will go without a paycheck. So I know the impact of the shutdown, Gaetz said. So it may get worse before it gets better, but I have little to offer but blood, sweat and tears. But that may be what it takes. A government closure is increasingly likely as the time runs out for Congress to act. McCarthy's bid to move ahead with traditional popular defence funding bills as first step towards keeping the government running was shattered. On a vote of 2012 to 2016, 5 Republicans refused to vote with the increasingly endangered Speaker. A 6th Republican voted no on progressional grounds so the bill could be reconsidered. Moving forward with the defence bill was supposed to be a way of McCarthy to build goodwill among the GOP House majority as he tried to pass a temporary measure just to keep the government running for another month. It too had catered to another hard right priorities, such as slashing spending on 8% from many services and bolstering security at the US-Mexico border. Many on the right flank opposed the deal McCarthy struck with Biden this year over the spending levels that are trying to dismantle it now. They want to see progress on the individual appropriate bills that would fund the various federal departments at the lower levels these lawmakers are demanding. The morning test vote shattered a McCarthy strategy that had emerged just the night before. Republicans had appeared on track in a tight roll call to advancing the measure Thursday. Then the Democrats had not yet voted to begin rushing into the calendar. Let me do that again. Then the Democrats who had not yet voted began rushing into the chamber. That's better. New York representative, not Republican, representative, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's a gem, by the way. Absolute gem of a woman, what she does. And fellow Democrats yelled out to hold open the vote. She was a no. A few others came in from behind her and tipped the tally towards defeat. The Democrats opposed the military bill on many fronts, including Republicans' provisions that would put gut diversity programs at the Pentagon. As passage appeared doomed, attention turned to the 5 Republicans holdout to switch their votes. GOP leaders spent more than an hour on the floor trying to recruit one of them, Republican Dan Bishop, INC, to vote yes. Every time there is the slightest relief of the pressure, the movement goes away from completing the work, Bishop says. When asked what it would take to get his vote, Bishop said, I think a schedule of appropriate bills over Kevin McCarthy's signature would be meaningful to you and me. Others were dug in, including some who had supposedly advancing defense bill just 2 days ago when it first failed. Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene. Think of Marjorie Taylor Greene like, think of the likes of Suella Braverman. Someone like that. Best way to describe her. A chief opponent of more aid to Ukraine in the war against Russia says she voted against the defence bill this time because her party's leadership refused to separate out the war money. Her stance came as Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky was at the capital during the high-profile visit to Washington. McCarthy had pledged to keep lawmakers in session this weekend for as long as it took to finish their work, but they were sent home. They could be called back on ample notice. Many Republicans were starting to speak up more forcefully against their hard-right colleagues. New York Republican Mike Law, who represents a swing district, said he would not be party to a shutdown. There needs to be a realisation that you're not going to get everything you want, he said. Just throwing a temper tantrum and stomping your feet, frankly, not only is it wrong, it is just pathetic. It's good that some Republicans are coming outright. Excuse me. It is good that some Republicans are coming out outright bashing the MAGAs in their party. I mean, they really are all over the goddamn place. They really, really are. But when you got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz in there, it really is quite damaging to their party having such people in there. Kevin McCarthy is just in an absolute tearing his goddamn hair out in trying to avoid this federal shutdown. But I fear that it's probably going to happen. As of recording this, they still have 8 days. Obviously, there's the weekend, so they'll be back in on Monday trying to sort it out without a doubt. He will try and do what they can, but let's hope they get something sorted for the sake of the American people, obviously, and rightfully so, guys. So, guys, we have reached the end of the world's news round. What did you guys think of some of the stories that we covered today? Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below or in the live chat here. Let me know what you guys think of some of it so far. Interesting to see what will happen with Marine Le Pen, the conflict in Ukraine. Obviously, things still carrying on in Israel and Palestine. I do fear for those in China who are trying to speak out and being silenced. There is many stories taking place across the world, and obviously you can't just cover everything, but I do try to cover some things obviously here. So we've just reached roughly just under the 50-minute mark. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you have watched through the whole thing, I really do appreciate it. If you can, hit the like button for me, and if you can share across social media, it'd be greatly appreciated. And if you hit the bell notification icon, you'll be notified of every time a video uploads or when I go live. Thanks again for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you all very, very soon.